Hello and welcome to my reading. My name is Travis Heermann, and I am an author and a filmmaker. And this is my very first StokerCon, so I am super excited to be here. I'm going to read chapter 1 of Tokyo Blood Magic, which is a cultivation slash urban fantasy novel that can best be described as martial arts, magic, monsters, and mayhem. Tokyo Blood Magic came out in December. Book 2 is called Tokyo Monster Mash. Anyway, I'm super excited about this series. It is published by Shadow Alley Press. All right, so here we go. Chapter 1. He tracked the creature through the rain by the sound of the child's crying. His soft-soled tabi kept his tread silent, but did little to keep out the rain. The coal-black duster he wore shed the rain and the touch of any wandering gaze, but his feet were drenched as he stole along the dark alleys of Kabuki-cho, the adult entertainment district of Tokyo's Shinjuku city. Close-packed skyscrapers hid the sky but didn't stop the rain. He paused at the mouth of a narrow alley. A nearby garbage can stank of seafood gone rancid in the day's muggy heat. The rain made halos around the lights of the izakaya, massage parlors, soap lands, hostess bars, love hotels, porn shops, brothels. Their profuse lights glowed against the undersides of the low-hanging clouds. The tallest buildings disappeared into the fog. At this time of night, restaurants were long since closed. On a nearby street corner, a late-night udon stand looked like a drowned hound, unoccupied except for the proprietor, who sat asleep in the yellow globe of light under the awning, chin in his hand. In the distance, a couple of drunk salarymen stumbled out of a dimly lit archway, clutching girls half their age, who squealed at the rain. The quartet rushed into a waiting taxi, oblivious to how close they had come to encountering something they really wouldn't want to meet on a dark, rainy street. Anyone who encountered what Django was chasing on this rainy night would surely regret it. The taxi was the only vehicle on the glossy ribbon of deserted street. He closed his eyes for a moment and plunged his attention into the indigo pool of Maho, black magic essence, behind his forehead, his third eye pool. Awakening his third eye turned the impenetrable night into coruscating shadows and auras, heightening all his senses, including his hearing. His coat felt heavier, the rain stickier, the nearby garbage can all the more pungent. The ongoing wail of the child, disappearing into the distance, turned his head. A narrow street led toward Okubo Park, which wasn't a park at all, but a flat expanse of concrete 100 meters long and 30 wide, with a few small trees planted around the perimeter, frequented mostly by homeless people. For all the Japanese love of nature, in a metropolitan area of some 40 million people, with skyscrapers reaching incredible heights, nature could be hard to come by. Tonight, the homeless had been driven under shelter. The kami of the rain held sway now. Normally, such spirits smelled and felt of water, cleansing but inexorable. It made the essence pool situated in his sacrum, associated with water maho, thrum with vigor. But tonight there was a sourness to the rain, as if the spirits were tainted. It had come into the city suddenly, after a clear, sweltering summer day with no rain in the weather forecast. The rain's source was not natural weather patterns. With his third eye open, its corresponding essence pool pulsed with power, ready for use. Silent as a fish in deep water, he stepped into a shadow at the corner of Go Curry and stepped out of a shadow half a block nearer the sound of the crying child, at the innocuous, dimly lit entrance to a hostess bar whose name he couldn't parse. After 10 years in Japan, he still had trouble with a few kanji characters, especially when someone was deliberately being opaque with their language, like those uninterested in catering to foreigners. But all this he absorbed in less than a heartbeat, with extended feelers of perception reaching into realms beyond the mortal one. The child's continuing wail was the beacon that led him on. Did no one else hear it? Did no one think to help the child? Not that they could have. One more shadow blink, and he stood at the perimeter of Okubo Park, slipping from the dark shelter of an apartment complex back entrance. complex's back entrance. The park's broad concrete slab was mostly dark, the shadows of the perimeter's spindly trees pixelated by the rain. There she was, crossing the concrete with a slow, shambling step. She dragged a burlap sack behind her. The sack writhed and shrieked with terror. Her drenched, colorless kimono clung to her emaciated frame, her obi sagging around her waist as if she couldn't be wrapped tight enough. Her hair was a bedraggled mass that obscured her face but revealed the pale flesh of her neck. Her fingers were knotted fiercely around the sack, dragging it through shallow puddles. Through his third eye, he studied her aura. It flickered with blue and violet into the ultraviolet. All 7 of his essence pools, located at his tailbone, his sacrum, his hara, or belly, his heart, his throat, his forehead, his crown, tingled in anticipation with the influx of maho he would claim when he dispatched this creature. The arrival of rain suggested this yokai was likely an ame onna, a rain woman. The Shiseki no Go Tairo, the Annals of the Council of 5 Elders, said that ame onna were often the ghosts of mothers who'd lost their minds in despair and grief over having their children snatched away from them. As such, the creature could be somewhat of a tragic figure, except that it was dragging a living child away to its doom. Perhaps it wanted to drag the child away into Jianghu, the realm of rivers and lakes through which demons, gods, and supernatural creatures passed on their way to other planes, or sometimes chose to reside. Perhaps it was taking the child straight to hell. The Ame-onna paused and lifted its head. Django knew better than to think of it as a woman, because nothing of a human female remained in its nature except distant echoes. It was operating on some purpose only it understood. It turned toward him. Its voice was the hiss of rain itself. "I see you, Kenji Wang." It knew his name. How did it know his name? But he tamped down his surprise and stepped into the rain. He reached under his duster for the hilt of his katana and drew it. The sheen of steel, beaded by rain, glimmered in the meager light. "The child does not belong to you," he said in Japanese. Its eyes flared through yellow to red. "It is mine," it hissed. "It should have been mine." He walked closer, opening his fire pool, the crucible of fire maho in his belly. His blood heated as it suffused him, throbbing, pulsing through his spirit and body and into his weapon until his sword was part of his very soul and as sharp as his force of will, able to cut flesh and spirit alike. It was called the Sunblade. "Give me the child and go back where you came from. You don't belong here." The creature hissed, and her body recoiled like a snake. Her neck stretched to 3 feet, a gaping mouth opening impossibly wide. Those lantern coals of eyes blazed. He raised his blade. "Obey me, creature, or I'll send you straight to Jigoku." Its elongated neck distorted its taunt. "You're welcome to try, Kenji Wang. Perhaps I shall take you with me." He slowed his approach, but didn't stop. "How do you know my name?" The head bobbed like a cobra's as it laughed. "Who does not know of Django Wang, the council's loyal lapdog?" This creature knew of the council. The mortal world did not, and most yokai were all but mindless, possessed only of their own strange cunning, remembering only enough of their human lives to fuel the obsessions that turned them into monsters. Django took another step. "What do you know of the council?" Screeching laughter grated on his ears. The monstrous aspect of her appearance disappeared as if by flipping a switch, leaving a beautiful young woman in a sodden, old-style kimono. With big, soulful eyes and full lips, her face held a demure beauty even through the white makeup of a geisha, now streaked with rain. But it was just a flash, and then the streaks in her makeup turned red as blood poured from her eyes like tears. Her teeth turned black and sharp, and her eyes blazed like coals of hatred. Her hair sprang out like a nest of serpents, stretching and growing and darting toward him. With a gasp of surprise and dismay, he rolled backward and came to his feet with sword raised. Heartbeat hammering. Chill dashed through him, an intense cold that had nothing to do with temperature. His knees went weak. This was not a rain woman. It was an onryo, a grudge spirit, one of the most powerful ghosts in all of the supernatural realms. He extended a handful of earth maho, drawn from his root essence pool, and swept it around him. The earth essence bubbled forth instantly at his call and formed an invisible barrier around him. His third eye saw it as an ancient castle. It would protect him from most earthly threats, but it would not hold off an onryo for long. Its hair stabbed into the cracks and crevices of Django's castle like tree roots worming between boulders. He slashed at the hair. It was tougher than steel wire, but his blade, infused with fire maho, could cut almost anything. Black snakes of hair splatted to the ground, writhed for a moment, then disappeared as tendrils of smoke. The onryo lunged forward, bloody black talons outstretched, its screech of rage echoing through the canyons of steel and concrete. It slammed into his castle, buckling his defenses. The power of its lust for vengeance would permeate the dreams of everyone in Kabuki-cho. There would be murders in the days to come. Django slashed a diagonal cut toward the ghost's neck, but it dodged back with a deep hiss, then began to circle him. His hands trembled with fear. If that thing got its talons on him, he would die most horrendously, and it would still be free to rip swaths of vengeance and hatred through the mortal world. From within his duster, he pulled 3 bow shuriken, steel needles the length of a hand and the thickness of a pencil. With his left hand, he infused them with fire and flung them at the ghost. It dodged one, but caught the other 2 in its torso. The steel needles stabbed through its body and out of its back as if it were only half substantial. But the onryo screamed in pain, ichor soaking its kimono. The lips of the wounds sizzled and glowed with embers. He flung another barrage of fire shuriken, but the creature leaped high into the air and they skittered uselessly across the concrete. He gritted his teeth at the waste of fire essence. Every time he infused a weapon or a handful of shuriken with fire, it required a dose of essence. Once any given pool had been emptied, he had to rest and meditate to allow the cosmos to refill it. The last-ditch option was to refill them via his brand, something to be done only in the direst of circumstances. Like fighting an onryo, perhaps, but he was not yet that desperate. The instant the monster landed, it lunged toward him again, slamming into his barrier, shattering it. In desperation, he drove his blade through the ghost's chest. It leaped back again, jerking itself free of his blade. He chased it with another slash, another, driving it back and back. The stench of burning death filled his nose and cinched his throat tight. Wherever his sword found its target, the lips of the slice smoked and burned. Step by step, he drove the creature back toward one of the trees. It dodged a cut that would have cleft it from shoulder to waist. Instead, his slash felled the tree, slicing through the 6-inch trunk as if it were a tatami mat, singeing the edges of the cut. The scent of the burnt wood mixed with rain. The tree trunk slipped off its stump and fell between them, tangling his sword in its branches. The onryo charged through the tree, insubstantial as smoke, then seized him in its talons by the shoulder and neck. Its scream blasted a fetid stench into his face. Its eyes were coals of hate, its mouth a forest of black fangs reaching for his face. One heartbeat from now, he would be headless. In the last second before his death, Django's mind flashed to his old mentor's words. "You are too arrogant about your skills. You don't think you have to study or practice?" Toshiro had told him on more than one frustrating occasion. "The life of a hunter-seeker is one of constant cultivation. Talent and audacity will only get you killed facing the things we must face. The graveyards of history are filled with talented men who did not press on. Determination against distraction and lassitude, humility against the arrogance of the talented. Martial arts training feeds your body, which feeds your spirit, which feeds your maho, which feeds your spirit, which feeds your body, which feeds your martial training. Just as the farmer knows the cycles of earth and growth, how death and life embrace, through cultivation to make new crops, you must not neglect cultivation. It is the key. But Toshiro was dead now, so screw that guy. The Onryo's foul teeth swept toward Django's face. He was done for, a goner. Soon he would be able to ask Toshiro if it was all worth it. Nyar! A cat's meow of challenge, loud and close, made both Django and the ghost jump. As the Onryo turned, Django whipped out his wakizashi, his short sword, with his left hand, and with an upward slash, severed the arm gripping his shoulder. The forearm fell, twitching, and a gout of fetid ichor sprayed Django's face. Revulsion surged up in his throat at the charnel stench of the creature's ichor. The Onryo screamed in rage, snatched up the severed hand, and flung it at the snow-white cat standing 2 meters away. Huge green eyes narrowed. Its ears laid back. It was big for a house cat, but it dodged easily. Its rain-slicked fur accentuated its muscles, made it look like a tiger. It released another challenge and a hiss to match, crouching to spring, tail thrashing. It was such an incongruous sight, so out of nowhere, that Django just stared for half a heartbeat. Tendrils of the Onryo's hair lashed toward the cat. The cat leaped almost 3 meters into the air and backward. But this moment of distraction was Django's opening. He leaped forward, slashing at the Onryo's neck. His blade bit with trained precision, and the ghost's head tumbled from its narrow shoulders. The body staggered and flailed for a moment until it righted itself. The severed head's seething fan of hair sprang out like tentacles reaching for its body. Django laid a straight kick into the Onryo's belly, driving it away from the head. 3 more swift cuts severed the body's remaining limbs. The body lay in pieces, squirming at his feet. The cat eased back from its attack stance and gazed steadily at him, rain dripping quietly from its whiskers as if to say, "Are you going to finish it off or aren't you?" Given even a little time, the Onryo would reassemble itself. He sheathed his katana and knelt beside the head. Taking a deep breath, he sent the intention of his will from his crown, where the celestial pool resided, down through his body, through each pool, toward his tailbone, his root, where the element of earth resided. None of this would be visible to a human onlooker. All they would see was a man in a duster laying his palm atop a severed head and holding it there for almost half a minute. But they might not even believe even that. Normal humans, penchant for disbelieving what was right before their eyes was not only mind-boggling, it was how supernatural beings, and those who hunted them, managed to stay hidden and operate in the cracks of the world. A normal human wouldn't see him focus his will to blast a Maho spear through the Onryo's celestial pool, severing its connection to all the universes, a spear that shattered each pool in succession, regardless of whether the head was still connected to its body. Nor would the onlooker see him siphon every last mote of the creature's magical energy into himself in a great flaring gush. Fingers of multicolored lightning burst from his eyes as the creature's raw power blasted through him. A clap of thunder slammed him flat onto the concrete. The creature held too much essence. It was like drinking from a fire hose. He was going to explode with the inrush, and he couldn't stop it. He choked, gasped, convulsed as an enormous bolus of celestial energy flooded into him. His celestial pool, always hungry for such rare energy, opened to receive it. Suddenly, his brain was on ultraviolet fire. Crying out, he flung himself away from the dissipating ash of the Onryo, but it was too late. The power was already in him. Lightning flashed down from the sky, striking a tree and arcing into him. He screamed and smelled burnt flesh. Agony burst through every nerve ending as the power both seared and healed him simultaneously. Falling onto his side, he lay gasping. But as the pain subsided, he realized something. His celestial pool crackled with enough Maho essence to awaken and level up. To awaken his third pool, he had to meditate long enough to harness, process, and incorporate the massive bolus of magical energy. And if he didn't do it soon, this energy would have nowhere to go, running rampant without focus or constraint. If left unprocessed and uncontrolled long enough, it would burn out his celestial pool, crippling his Maho abilities forever. His scalp felt like his hair had been wetted and plugged into an electrical socket. Static energy snapped between his lips, his eyelids. "Well, that was most impressive," the cat said. And thank you very much.